So there were some protests in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. And so again, I don't really know much of the context here. I had not heard of this case before this morning, because last night I was watching the VP debate, and then I got really high, and then I went to sleep. So all of this kind of happened, and I didn't know any about it until I woke up this morning. So I'm going to try my best. I've got a few video clips that I've assorted from Twitter, mostly from like one account, but whatever. There's not that much info on this protest yet. So again, this is still developing. So I'm just going to read to you this full NPR article because, again, I don't know any other details outside of a couple things I read this morning. So I'm a bad person when it comes to doing my due diligence, but I woke up late, so bear with me. Demonstrators marched in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, Wednesday. That's 3 W's in a row. Wednesday night to protest the decision not to charge a police officer in the killing of a black 17-year-old youth in February. Okay, so this killing happened in February. And this has been a very consistent theme. You saw the killers of Breonna Taylor. They didn't get charged with anything related to Breonna Taylor. They got charged with accidentally endangering the white neighbor by shooting at the wall of an apartment. So this is something you see often. There was also this case of another situation, I believe, of the victim was Jonathan Price, I want to say. I'm pretty sure the killer of him is also getting away scot-free as well. So this is something that happens very frequently. It's not good. And at this point, right, it's a feedback loop that's been well documented. People know, right, if you are not going to charge the officers with the things that they have done, that there will be a reaction, right? And there's a lot of people that will always blame the reaction and just ignore the action. And that's why when we talk about these protests, we have to understand what they're protesting. It's super important. So, Milwaukee County District Attorney John Chisholm said Wauwatosa police officer Joseph Mensah acted in self-defense by shooting Alvin Cole after police responded to a disturbance at a shopping mall. In a 14-page letter addressed to Wauwatosa Police Chief Barry Weber, Chisholm, I'm so sorry, presented details of the investigation into the incident and the reasons for his decision not to charge Mensah. Chisholm said the investigation found that Cole had a stolen 9mm pistol which he displayed at the Mayfair Mall during an argument with another person. Chisholm said when police arrived and encountered Cole in the parking lot, he ran from the officers, discharged the gun, refused to surrender it, and was then fired on by Mensah. Now, again, I don't know much about the initial case here, and I'm assuming that the protests continue and all that stuff. I'm going to be reading more details about that. But all of this I don't see as a reason for the death penalty, so I'm just throwing that out there. And also, it's very well known that police will lie about everything. For example, the police autopsy on George Floyd, right, said that he died of like fentanyl overdose or whatever the fuck. And then you had an independent autopsy reveal that no, he died of asphyxiation. So again, cops will lie at all costs. Cops adjacent, they will all lie. Anyone in the government will lie for cops before they lie for people. That's just how it goes in the year 2020. In this case, concluded Chisholm, there is sufficient evidence that Officer Mensah had an actual subjective belief that deadly force was necessary. An actual subjective belief. Like what? What? Don't we have laws for that? So that we don't have subjective beliefs when it comes to killing people? Alright? So he had a subjective belief that deadly force was necessary, and that belief was objectively reasonable. So the subjective belief was objectively reasonable. Interesting language. I do not believe that the state could disprove self-defense or defense of others in this case, and therefore could not meet the burden required to charge Officer Mensah. In addition to Chisholm's report, an independent investigator, former U.S. Attorney Stephen Biskupek, recommended that Mensah, who also is black, be fired. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reports that Cole was the third person shot and killed by Mensah in the line of duty since 2015. That's a lot of people you're shooting and killing. I think as soon as you kill one person, you should lose your job as an officer. You've been desensitized to violence, right? You've gotten through violence, right? Chances are you've done so in a legal fashion. You shouldn't, just for your safety and our safety, right? If someone has killed someone, they are significantly more comfortable with killing a second person than the first person. That's been statistically documented, right? With anything, right? If someone, plays baseball and hits a home run, they're going to be more capable of hitting a second than they were to be hitting the first. That's just how it works. So I think if you shoot someone, you should have thorough reviewing. If you kill someone, you should go get a different job immediately. That should not be a conversation at all. In addition to Chisholm's report, an independent I already read that. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reports that Cole was the third person shot and killed by Mensah in the line of duty since 2015. The two earlier shootings were also found to be in self-defense, and the officer was not disciplined. How consistent? Biskupek wrote that keeping Mensah on the force creates an extraordinary, unwarranted, and unnecessary risk to the Wauwatosa Police Department in the city of Wauwatosa. At least there's some self-awareness there. The recommendation was harshly criticized by the state's largest police union. To use something that hasn't occurred, a fourth shooting, as a basis for terminating Officer Mensah now is ridiculous, said Jim Palmer, executive director of the Wisconsin Professional Police Association, according to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Again, police unions aren't real unions. They're garbage, folks, right? They're wolves in sheep's clothing. Protesters surrounded the Milwaukee County Public Safety Building while Cole's attorney and family members met with Chisholm, according to the Associated Press. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers announced during the day on Wednesday that he had activated the National Guard as a precaution to assist law enforcement in the event of demonstrations over the decision not to charge Mensah and Cole's death. The city of Wauwatosa, a Milwaukee suburb with about 48,000 residents, enacted a 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew through Monday. Protests were largely peaceful through late Wednesday. Wauwatosa police tweeted a video of protesters throwing rocks through store windows. What started as a protest has become a large disturbance of public order that has caused property damage and is threatening to cause injuries to persons, the Wauwatosa police said in a statement. While not all members of the group intend harm, it said everyone must disperse immediately. So again, I've got a bunch of videos. I don't have any particular order to these videos. This is just stuff that I found in a cursory search. So you can see here, police just kind of acting a little bit with instability. Very upset meatheads over there. Very interesting. So here we have another interesting video. Now again, there's a lot of people here. For a town that only has about 40 or 50,000 residents, this is a good show. This is a good showcase. But if you look at the police lineup here, look at the amount of cops that they have. And this is something for me that's always astounding, right? And again, I've been saying this since the start of these uprisings, is that we have enough money to the point where we can have, like, what, 50, 100 riot cops, right? Each riot costume, and they are costumes, don't get me wrong, each riot costume costs like $10,000 to $50,000. Yet we're having nurses and doctors in a pandemic depression committing suicide because they have seen traumatic things while treating people for COVID-19. We have a pandemic not of COVID-19, but of doctors committing suicide because the things that they have seen, because they don't have proper equipment to protect themselves and their staff, they're seeing their own staff get infected and die, and it's causing them extreme trauma and anxiety, right? And a proper costume or a proper uniform for a doctor or a nurse does not cost $50,000. It costs like maybe $5, right? And that's what's interesting here. Our government is capable of outfitting hundreds, thousands of these thugs, right, to beat the shit out of its own community, or their own communities, rather, right? But we can't outfit our doctors and our medical staff with proper protective equipment. We can't send 5 reusable masks to every household in April, right? The USPS had a plan to do that. We can't do that? Are you kidding me? The resources are there. They're just being stolen and utilized for things that we do not approve of. And so again, when you have this response to a protest, it creates a feedback loop. So as you can see, they march right up onto the police line. Now again, I don't know everything that happened at this protest. I'm only going off of clips that I've seen on Twitter and some stuff I found on Google. Right? So again, there's not a complete picture here. Now we have some evidence of people rioting and looting, it seems. As you can see, there's a gas station here, and they were rioting and they were looting. And that's, I think, a good thing. I mean, I don't know, this gas station has what? Insurance, right? You know, people are hungry, like, let's go get a snack, right? I am fully in favor of looting when it comes to corporate businesses. Now, again, if it turns out that that gas station is a family-owned gas station and they only got one gas station or something, which is unlikely, right? But if that is the case, right, and if all the context bears that out, I disagree with that. I think people should have looting targets like actually lined up beforehand. If you're going to loot, right, if that's something that you've made the decision to do, what you should do is make sure you don't fuck someone's life over, right? Because we're in the middle of a pandemic, we're in the middle of a depression, you don't want to ruin someone's life. You want to help as many people as possible, and that's my thing. So again, that's my stance on looting. So we have the police, and I'm so sorry for that. You have the police throw tear gas here, not good. Tear gas being used in almost every city in America right now. Like, it's ridiculous, dude. This shit's nuts. This is another thing I saw. And I don't know what the scoop is with this person. I don't know if they're on the side, so to speak, of Black Lives Matter, or if they're a vigilante, or if they're an undercover cop, or so I don't know. They seem to be LARPing. Right? They don't look like a police officer, but they do have like a Halloween costume badge on, and they seem to be directing traffic. So that's interesting, super interesting. I would love to know more about that. But then you've got, this is where things get a little like a little bit of a, what is the term? Haywire, I think. Hectic is another term. There's tear gas and a lot of projectiles being shot and a lot of clashes outside of a residential neighborhood. And so that's a recipe for disaster, because you're going to get these people in these homes who are going to call the cops saying that there's a party going on because they're afraid to look out their window, right? Because that's how white people are. And then the cops are going to be like, oh, sorry, that's us throwing tear gas through your window. My bad. Right, so that's super problematic. And again, just as a public service, announcement, if you're a protester at a Black Lives Matter rally, you definitely do not want to be attacking residential property. Now, if it's like Mitch McConnell's home, right, I'm not going to shed a tear. That's not going to be something I'm going to get involved in. I might post a clip and laugh, right? But if it's some random person's house, right, you don't want to be throwing rocks through their windows. That's just a bad idea. That's bad optics. And I'm not one to really care about optics, right? I'm not a huge optic person when it comes to these protests. I'm more concerned with justice. I'm more concerned with community organizing. I'm more concerned with getting what we need. But as far as optics go, As far as optics go, throwing rocks through random people's homes, not good. That's definitely not good. So that's something I definitely cannot endorse. And we have a candidate for Congress in Georgia who's using a lot of these videos for her ad campaigns. And again, I'm not much, I don't really care. Most of that shit is photoshopped. Like, they're going to lie about you regardless, right? So it's not a huge deal. But I'm just like, I've got a platform. I've got X amount of viewers. If someone's going to watch me, right, and they're going to go out to a protest, I want to instill to them what I believe, right? If you are going to go to one of these moments, right, that could be a moment of rebellion against the state, the best way to do that is to focus on corporate property and government property. When you start going after residential property, that just creates a problem. And this is something I've seen very, very little in all of these protests around the country. And this is why this is such bad optics, is because this happens almost, if not never. And so when you have this stuff captured on video, again, it's just bad optics. You just don't want to do that. It's bad optics. It's also bad praxis, right? It's just not good. Now, again, if this is the home of a politician or a district attorney that made a bad decision, or a police officer, that's one thing, right? I don't really care. I'm not trying to say you should go after and do anything, right? I got to be somewhat responsible here with my platform, right? But, like, at the same time, right, you just don't want to do that to random people's homes. You just don't. Because there's going to be someone who's going to go on Fox News in 3 days from now talking about how, and this is how you can tell that this is not an epidemic, because you would see this more often. But you're going to see someone on Fox News in like 3 days from now, right, saying, oh, a rioter threw a brick through my window and I was so scared and the police were, like, you're going to see that. If that's a thing, right, if the person in these homes or whatever that had to deal with this is of that persuasion in any capacity, they've already got the invite from Fox News. They've already got that deal. They're already going to go on as soon as possible. So, again, you just got to be safe. You got to make sure that you keep people in line. Yes, there's going to be opportunists, but you can't let them define the movement. You just can't do it. Can't do that. And as a result, you got to do your best to have all of the messaging be as positive as possible. And I say getting rid of police is positive messaging. That's my opinion. So anyway, that's what I've seen on this protest so far. Again, I haven't done a deep dive. This is just a cursory glance. But it seems overall, I don't know the full situation of the original shooting, but the protest seems very organized for the most part, and that's very nice to see. Seeing more spontaneous protests occurring that are organized means that our populace in this country is getting more organized, they're mobilizing more, they're strategizing more, and people are making those community connections. And that is what is extremely important, right? Is that people are making these connections so that, yeah, protesting, great. But what do we do after the protest, right? What do we do after the protest is over? And that's what's important. You need to make friends, you need to make comrades, and you need to make connections. You need to have mutual aid networks, right? If someone gets arrested at a protest, you need to be able to help them. If someone is being arrested at a protest, you need to try your best if the situation presents itself, right? If it's 1 or 2 cops versus 40 people, try to de-arrest them, right? You need to do what you can to protect your people. If someone needs help paying bills, you need to be able to have a line to help them. Have like a Twitter account, right, that has like, followers that wouldn't be mind donating to a GoFundMe, right? So like that's like the thing you got to focus on. You can't just throw things at people's property. That's not going to solve the problem. Now again, if you want to go to a corporation, right, that's one thing. Right, I'm not saying you should do that. I think there's more things that you can do. I think there's a lot of things that you can do that are probably more effective. But I'm not going to shed a tear if a Target gets its window broken. Boo-hoo, right? But again, you got to be smart. You got to strategize. And you got to, the number one goal is to help each other. Right? So when you protest, when you make these connections, if someone needs help buying diapers, you need to help them buy diapers, right? If someone needs help feeding their cat, right? Their cat's important to them, right? What if they have anxiety, right? If their cat dies, if something happens to their cat, this person is not going to be capable of helping you. This person's not going to be okay. You need to help people to the best of your ability, and that's what these protests are about. And that seems to be happening in a lot of cities across America. And the idea that these protests could gain such large numbers so spontaneously leads me to believe that something good will come from these protests, and that's what I think. So, yes.